The year was 1865, and the frontier was a land of both opportunity and death. For Eliza McCrae, it had delivered both. First in the form of Daniel's broad smile and warm hands, then in the frigid silence that came after he was lowered into the frozen earth. The wind howled across the high plains, dragging a line of snow like a funeral veil over the rolling hills. Eliza stood in the yard of the McCrae homestead, clutching her infant son to her chest. Her black shawl, frayed at the hem, snapped in the wind. The child squirmed and whimpered, his little mouth opening and closing as if searching for warmth that no longer came. Behind her, the heavy oak door slammed shut. Iron latch clanked. No goodbye, no second glance. Her sister-in-law's voice had been sharp as a skinning knife. There ain't room for beggars. You ain't kin. You're just the woman he brought back from Missouri. Eliza hadn't spoken a word as they took Daniel's rifle, his horse, his last winter coat. They left her a half loaf of hard bread and a single blanket barely worth the name. She stared at the closed door, its iron hinges already frosting over, and felt nothing. No tears, no rage, just the solid, terrible knowledge that they meant it. The baby whimpered again. She tightened her shawl and turned toward the woods. There was no road, only a ragged game trail winding into the trees. She didn't look back. Snow fell fast and wet, seeping through her boots, making her skirts heavy as iron. Each step sank into the drift, ankle deep, then calf deep. Her breath came in shallow puffs, white against the growing gray. She whispered to her son as she walked, voice cracking with cold. "It's all right, Micah. Mama's got you." But she didn't, not really. She had no rifle, no food, and no place to go. Daniel had spoken once of a trapper's lean-to 5 miles east, tucked near an old split-rock ridge. That was her best hope. That or a quick death. Branches clawed at her as the forest closed in. The world grew darker beneath the trees, silent but for the creak of the boughs and the wind threading through pine needles. By the time she found the lean-to, dusk had already swallowed the sky. It leaned to one side, half covered in snow and rot, but it was shelter. Eliza kicked away the drift at its mouth and ducked inside, knees aching, back stiff. The baby's cheeks were raw and red. His cries were weaker now. She gathered dry moss, dead branches, and a twist of birch bark. She struck flint on a rusted knife again and again until her fingers bled. A small flame caught. She huddled over it, shielding it with her body. As the fire grew, she curled around the baby and wept. That night, the cold pressed close, whispering doubts and death. The wolves came near midnight. She heard them first, low howls, then heavy footfalls crunching in the snow just beyond the shelter. One barked, short and sharp. Another answered. Her heart pounded. She grabbed the broken branch she'd brought inside. It was barely thicker than her wrist, useless against teeth. She didn't sleep, just sat, back to the wall, rocking Micah and whispering songs Daniel had taught her, old folk tunes from Georgia. Her voice cracked. Her lips bled. By morning, the wolves were gone, but so was her strength. She tried to stand. Her knees buckled. Her milk had dried. Micah sucked at her with pitiful desperation, then began to cry, thin, reedy sounds that sounded more like gasps. She closed her eyes, pressing her lips to his forehead. "We'll rest," she said, lying to them both. Just a bit longer. She hadn't noticed the footsteps in the snow until the crack of a branch snapped her awake. Her hand shot to the branch beside her. She gripped it like a sword. Another step, then another. The fire had died down, but there was enough light to see the silhouette that appeared at the shelter's edge. Tall, broad, rifle in hand. A man. He didn't move at first, just watched her. She couldn't see his eyes beneath the hat, but she felt them. Heavy as a hammer. "You aiming to rob me? Get it over with," she said, her voice rasping with fatigue. The man's voice came low, gravel dragged across iron. "Rob you?" He glanced around the wreck of the lean-to. "Don't look like you've got a damn thing worth stealing." She kept the branch raised. Her arms trembled. He stepped closer into the weak firelight. His coat was thick with furs, patched and worn. His beard was shot through with gray, eyes sun-shadowed and hollow. "You got a death wish, dragging a baby out here?" He's mine, she said quickly. Ain't no one dragging him but me. You'll both be dead by sundown. He crouched, resting his rifle across his knees, not pointing it. There's a storm coming. You see that sky? She didn't answer. He nodded once, more to himself than to her. You're coming with me. No, she spat. I don't know you. Name's Callahan. Jonas Callahan. That's supposed to mean something? He looked at her then, really looked. No, but starving don't mean anything either. You and I out here for pride. Go ahead. Just don't make the boy pay for it. He stood, adjusting his coat. I'll be at the ridge pass. If you got half a brain, you'll follow. She watched him disappear into the woods, listened as the sound of his boots faded. She held Micah tighter. Her lips brushed his forehead. He was colder now. She moved. Her legs screamed in protest. Her ribs burned. But she followed the broken trail he left in the snow. The climb to the ridge pass took nearly an hour. By the time she crested the edge, her skirt was torn, her hands numb, and she could no longer feel her feet. Jonas was waiting near a grove of old pine. He didn't smile, didn't offer help, just turned and walked. They moved through deepening snow until a structure came into view, a cabin nestled between stone bluffs and shielded from the worst of the wind. Smoke curled from the chimney. She stared at it like a dream. He opened the door and stepped aside. You're lucky I was out checking traps. Inside, warmth. A fire burned in a stone hearth. A tin kettle steamed. The smell of meat broth hit her like a wave. She didn't speak, just walked straight to the hearth and knelt beside it, clutching Micah like a lifeline. He watched her from across the room, brow furrowed. How long you been out there? 2 days. You got kin nearby? She laughed once bitter. I got none worth the word. He poured a cup of hot water and brought it over. You're lucky he ain't froze. I don't believe in luck. Then maybe believe in mercy. She looked up at him, eyes narrowing. Why'd you help us? He looked at the fire. Because no one helped me. She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. The weight in his voice told her enough. He handed her a clean cloth. Strip the boy. We'll get him warm. She hesitated, then obeyed. As she peeled off the frozen layers, she saw her son's skin, red, raw, blue in places. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. Jonas moved with quiet precision, wrapping the child in flannel and holding him close to the hearth. He'll live, he muttered, if you let me show you how to survive. She watched him, something cracking behind her ribs. You live out here alone? He nodded. Since the war. You fought. Everyone fought. That night, she lay on a cot near the fire, watching the flames dance across the log walls. Micah breathed softly beside her. Jonas sat near the door, rifle in his lap. Outside, the wind screamed and snow blanketed the forest. She whispered, more to herself than him, thank you. He didn't look back, just said, don't thank me yet. She fell asleep to the sound of the fire and the storm, her body aching but her heart steady. For the first time in days, she dreamed of spring, and far away, hidden in the shadows of the forest, eyes watched the cabin, waiting. They hadn't come all this way to let a widow vanish into the trees. Not without a fight. The storm came hard that week, galloping in from the north like a cavalry charge. Snow blew sideways across the valley, drowning every trail and silencing the woods with a hush so thick it made your ears ring. Eliza stood in the doorway of the cabin, baby Micah pressed to her chest, and watched the white world swallow the trees. Jonas Callahan nailed an extra board across the shutters. His movements were precise, practiced. He worked like a man who'd done everything a dozen times before, without fuss, without needing to speak. You seen worse? She asked, brushing snow from her skirts. He looked up, hammer still in hand. This ain't the worst, but it'll test your bones. They moved around each other like ghosts at first, cautious, circling, silent except for the baby's cries. Eliza took to boiling water, darning socks, scrubbing the tin pots until her fingers wrinkled. It gave her purpose, a sliver of control. Jonas didn't complain. He gave her space. And in return, she left his past unpicked. Micah warmed up, pinked up. He began to laugh in short, gurgling fits whenever the kettle whistled or the fire cracked too loud. For the first time since Daniel's death, Eliza let herself breathe deep. Just once. Just enough. Jonas hunted early each morning. Never said where, never offered to take her. She asked once. He grunted. Wolves are starving. And you've got a baby. She didn't press again. Still, she watched him. How he set traps with careful fingers. How he sharpened his knife by firelight. How he spoke to the dog, an old, gray mutt named Remy, as if it were his last friend in the world. Jonas didn't laugh. He didn't tell stories. But when he looked at Micah, something softened. One night, while wind clawed at the roof and the fire popped loud in the hearth, Eliza stirred broth in a cracked pot. She turned to Jonas, who sat near the door, oiling his rifle. "My husband died chasing down a loose horse," she said unprompted. "His brother told me later he saw the whole thing. Never lifted a hand to help." Jonas didn't move. Day of the funeral, they started dividing his things, she continued. "Didn't even wait till I was done weeping. That's what grief does to people," he said. "Turns them to thieves." She gave a bitter smile. "I don't think it was grief. I think it was greed dressed up in black coats." He nodded once. "Ain't a lie." She sat across from him, Micah asleep in her lap. "Why'd you leave the world behind?" Jonas wiped the cloth along the barrel and set it aside. "War. Raiders hit our place near St. Joseph. Wife and boy were inside. I was out hunting. Came back to ashes." Eliza didn't speak for a long while. "I'm sorry. Don't be. That was 15 winters ago." He leaned forward, voice lower. "That was when I learned there's no mercy in the wild. Only what you make yourself." A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the fire and the wind howling like old ghosts outside. They found a rhythm after that. It wasn't friendship, not exactly. More like the slow settling of snow on a branch, cautious but inevitable. Each morning, Eliza learned something new. Jonas showed her how to twist pine needles into tea, how to smoke rabbit meat over the hearth, how to clean a wound with spirits and grit. He handed her an old pistol one day, its grip worn smooth. "You ever shot before?" She shook her head. "You'll learn." They practiced behind the cabin, bundled in coats, with Micah tucked in a basket nearby. Her hands shook the first time she fired. The shot rang out like thunder, scattering crows from the trees. Jonas nodded. Again and again she shot, until her wrists ached and her ears rang, until she could hit the can 10 feet away 3 times out of 5. He said nothing, just picked up the brass shells and walked inside. That night, she told Micah, "I'll never be helpless again. Not for you." 3 days later, the storm worsened. The chimney clogged with soot, smoke spilling into the cabin like a ghost. Jonas climbed onto the roof to clear it, while Eliza held the baby close and stirred ashes from the hearth. They patched the roof with hide and pine tar. The water froze in the wash basin overnight. Still, they survived. It was on the 6th morning that she heard the shot. She was alone in the cabin, Jonas gone early to check his traps. The sound rolled in from the woods like a drumbeat. One sharp crack, too close to be thunder. Eliza stiffened. She wrapped Micah tighter in his blanket and reached for the pistol Jonas had given her. She'd cleaned it last night, just as he taught her. "Stay quiet," she whispered, sliding the pistol into her coat. Outside, the snow was fresh. No birds, no wind, just that heavy silence that only came before danger. She stepped off the porch, boots crunching softly, and followed the sound. At the edge of the tree line, she stopped. A man stepped into view between the pines. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick buffalo coat. His hair was long and greasy beneath a slouch hat. A rifle slung across his shoulder. Eliza knew him. Silas McCrae, her brother-in-law. Well, he drawled, as if they'd bumped into each other at the general store. "Ain't this a surprise?" She raised the pistol, both hands trembling. "Get out." He chuckled, easy as syrup. "Relax, darling. I came to check on my nephew. He's none of your concern." He stepped forward. "Don't," she barked. He paused just long enough to grin. "You always were fiery. That's what Daniel liked about you. But he's gone. And you've got something that don't belong to you." She kept the pistol aimed high. "You're trespassing. And you're squatting." He spread his arms wide. "Daniel's land, Daniel's blood. Micah's the last of the McCraes. which means we'll be taking him home where he belongs. No, she said. Over my dead body. Maybe, Silas said, cocking his rifle. That's the plan. Then came the snap of a second gun. Silas staggered, dropped his rifle, and spun. Jonas emerged from the trees, shotgun raised, eyes like cold steel. Silas dropped to his knees, blood soaking his coat sleeve. Jonas moved like a shadow, crossing the distance in seconds. He kicked the rifle away, shoved Silas on his back, and pressed the barrel to his chest. Tell me how many more. Silas coughed. Just me. You're lying. Maybe. He grinned, blood on his teeth. Maybe I ain't. Jonas looked to Eliza. You all right? She nodded barely. He turned back to Silas. You come here again, you'll leave in pieces. Already leaving in pieces, Silas muttered, holding his arm. Jonas stepped back. Start walking. And pray your kin got more sense than you. Silas staggered up, cradling his arm, and limped off into the woods without another word. Back in the cabin, Jonas reloaded his shotgun with deliberate slowness. You're going to have to choose, he said without looking at her. You want to keep running? Or you want to start surviving like you mean it? Eliza laid Micah in his basket and stood beside the hearth. Her voice was quiet but sure. I'll survive, but not by hiding. He looked up at her, a flicker of something passing through his gaze. Approval, maybe, or understanding. We'll need to move, he said. They'll come back, and they'll bring more. She nodded. They packed what they could. Dried meat, flour, bullets, spare coats. Jonas stitched up Silas's blood trail as best he could, but it was only a matter of time. That night, as snow fell again, soft and silent, Eliza sat near the fire, pistol in hand, watching Micah sleep. Jonas stood at the window, eyes scanning the dark. They won't stop, she whispered. No, he agreed. They won't. Then we take the fight to them. He glanced over his shoulder. That what you want? No, she said. It's what's necessary. He nodded once. Outside, somewhere beyond the ridge, wolves howled. But inside the cabin, the fire held strong. And Eliza McCrae, once cast aside like a broken thing, felt something rise in her chest that she hadn't known in weeks. Resolve. They would come. Let them. The wind tore through the trees as they moved, sharp and bitter, carrying the scent of pine and something darker. Gunpowder, blood, and vengeance. The sun hovered low, pale behind iron-gray clouds. Jonas led the way down the deer path, boots breaking the frost crust with every step. Eliza followed close behind, Micah pressed tight against her chest, wrapped in layers of wool and fear. They hadn't spoken much since the cabin. There was nothing left to say. They knew what was coming. They'd seen the riders at dawn, 3 of them this time, all McCrae's. Eliza spotted the glint of a spyglass across the ridge and had known. They were circling in, herding them toward the river. They want to cut us off, Jonas had said, calm as ever. We'll beat them to it. Now they climbed the ridge trail in silence, every breath ghosting in the cold. Jonas's arm was stiff from where the knife wound reopened. He hadn't said a word about it, but Eliza saw the blood spotting through his coat. You need to rest, she said. I rest when we're dead, he muttered, but slower than before. They reached the top just before dusk. Below lay the river, wide, frozen, coiled like a serpent waiting to crack. Ice glistened underfoot, blue and black veins stretching from bank to bank. We cross here, Eliza asked, her voice low. It's the fastest way out. No trail to track, no scent to follow. Jonas knelt, tested the ice with his boot. It'll hold, maybe. She hesitated, looked down at Micah's face, asleep and warm for now. Then let's move, she said. They stepped onto the ice. The wind cut sideways, howling off the bluffs. The frozen river groaned beneath them, but it held. Step by step, they moved across, slow and wide-footed. Jonas led, shotgun slung low, his every movement calculated. Halfway across, the first shot cracked. It echoed across the valley, loud as a church bell. A pine tree splintered behind them. Jonas spun, raised the shotgun. Go. Run. Eliza bolted, gripping Micah tight, her feet sliding on the ice. She didn't look back, not until she reached the far bank. Then she turned. Silas McCrae stood at the ridge line, flanked by two others. All three were mounted, rifles aimed, faces hard as the land. "I warned you," Jonas shouted. Silas grinned down. "And I didn't listen." Another shot rang out. Jonas ducked, returned fire. The blast took one of the men clean from his saddle. Horse screamed. Rider fell limp. Chaos erupted. Jonas moved like a ghost, down low, firing, reloading, moving. A bullet clipped his coat. Another ripped through his sleeve. Eliza dropped behind a boulder, breathing hard. She set Micah down behind it, covered him in her shawl, and turned back. Jonas shouted, "Stay down." She didn't. She crawled forward through the snow, pistol in hand, heart hammering in her throat. One of the riders charged across the ice, hoofbeats thundering. Jonas took aim, fired. Horse went down, legs splaying wide. The rider was thrown, slammed hard against the ice. He didn't rise. Two down. Only Silas remained. He dismounted, stepped slowly onto the ice. Rifle cradled in his arms. A grin carved across his face like something out of the devil's own dream. "You got lucky, Callahan," he said. "But I ain't like them. I don't miss." Jonas didn't answer. Silas raised the rifle. Eliza stood. The crack of her shot split the air like lightning. Silas stumbled. Blood bloomed across his thigh. He dropped to one knee. "You damn," he snarled, aiming again, but Jonas was already moving. A roar, a blur. Jonas tackled him across the ice. The two men rolled, fists flying, boots scraping, knives drawn. The river groaned louder, furious now. Eliza rushed forward, grabbing Micah. She ran to the edge of the trees, turning to watch the fight. Jonas had Silas pinned. Blood on both men's faces. Jonas raised his knife. "Do it," Silas spat. "You're just like me." Jonas paused. His hand trembled. Then he drove the knife down, not into Silas's throat, but the ice beside his head. Crack! A jagged split spidered outward. Jonas rose, panting. Silas lay stunned, blinking up at him. "You're right," Jonas said, voice ragged. "But I'm trying not to be." He turned, staggered back toward the bank. Then the ice gave way. Silas screamed as he plunged through. Freezing black water swallowed him whole. Jonas spun, reached. Eliza dropped Micah at the tree line and ran to him. Jonas grabbed the edge of the hole, pulled with one good arm. Eliza caught his wrist. "I've got you." He didn't speak, just gritted his teeth and climbed, ice slicing his hands. She hauled him the last foot onto solid ground. They collapsed together on the shore, soaked and gasping. Silas was gone. Only the sound of rushing water beneath the ice remained. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then Jonas sat up, coughing hard. "You all right?" Eliza asked. He nodded, barely. "You?" She looked back at Micah, still wrapped, still safe. "We're here." Jonas looked at her, eyes soft now, rimmed with frost and firelight. "You didn't run." "I said I wouldn't." They rested that night in a cave above the river, curled close by a fire. Jonas's wound was cleaned, bound tight. Eliza sang soft lullabies to Micah, her voice shaking but sure. In the morning, frost rimmed the trees. The sun crept over the bluffs, and the world felt still. They walked away from the river, no longer hunted. They passed the ridge line, crossed the dead trees, and came upon a wide hollow nestled between the hills. Eliza stopped. This could be home. Jonas looked at her. "You sure?" She smiled, small and worn. "It ain't about sure. It's about starting." He nodded once. They built together, cut logs, stacked stone, mended the roof. Days turned to weeks. Jonas carved a cradle from pine. Eliza planted root vegetables and dried herbs along the slope. At night they talked. Not much, just enough. And slowly, something new took root in that quiet space between tragedy and hope. Eliza McCrae was no longer the woman left to die. She had survived. She had fought. And she had won. As spring melted the last of the snow, Jonas stood at the doorway of their cabin, watching the boy play in the grass. Eliza came beside him, wiping flour from her hands. "You think he'll come?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, not now." She leaned into him, close but unspoken. "What if they do?" He looked down at her, then at the boy. "Then we'll be ready." A hawk circled high overhead. The wind blew soft. In the stillness, there was peace. For now, and perhaps for good.